Men today are no longer pillars, they are faint shadows, living off the approval of others, trembling at rejection, crumbling over a few harsh comments online. You used to have principles, used to dream, used to want to protect something, but the world didn't bend to your will, and you took the easy way out. You quit. You tell yourself you're fine, but every night you lie awake, eaten alive by a gnawing emptiness. You're not yourself anymore. You're a faded copy of a man who once had fire. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and like if you're new here. It helps me keep bringing you more valuable content. Here's a brutal truth most men won't admit. The majority of your suffering doesn't come from the world. It comes from your failure to control your own mind. You're not being destroyed by others. You're destroying yourself, day by day, hour by hour, with the weak thoughts you've silently nurtured for years. You wake up and the first thing you grab is your phone. You let the world program your brain. Hundreds of strangers' faces now dictate whether today is a good day or a bad one. One random comment ruins your mood. You get angry when disrespected, jealous when others win, hurt when unrecognized. And the worst part, you think that's normal. But that's not living. That's existing like an emotional trash can. Whatever's thrown at you, you absorb. And you tell yourself you're kind, sensitive, understanding. No, you're weak. And worse, you don't even see how you've given up the greatest power any man can have, sovereignty over your own mind. The Stoics call this the principle of assent. It's what happens when you don't challenge your thoughts. You blindly agree with whatever feeling or idea pops into your head. No filter, no scrutiny. You let anything in, and whatever enters becomes truth. You become a puppet pulled by thoughts that aren't even yours. Epictetus said, "No one can hurt you unless you allow it." And your problem is, you allow far too much. You let a stranger's words become a firestorm in your chest. You let a minor inconvenience spiral into a personal crisis. You let someone else's opinion define your worth. You let others live rent-free in your head, and you call it being real. You wonder why you're exhausted, lost, constantly falling short. But you never stop to ask, what the hell am I thinking? Why am I letting this take over my mind? You just let it keep happening, and you get used to the feeling of helplessness. If you don't choose your thoughts, someone else will. And when that happens, you're not you anymore. You're just a product of ads, gossip, fear, and other people's insecurities. You might be successful, you might have money, you might even be admired. But deep down, you'll feel empty, because you sold your soul a long time ago. Stoicism doesn't teach you to sit cross-legged in a field and find peace. It teaches you to fight for the sovereignty of your mind, to be the gatekeeper of your mental fortress, letting nothing in that hasn't earned the right to enter. To respond, not react. To be the master, not the puppet. You can't avoid emotion, but you can refuse to let it rule you. You can pause mid-rage and ask, am I angry at truth, or because I'm soft? You can stand in fear and ask, what's actually happening, and what's just a movie I made up in my head? All transformation starts with a decision. No one, not even the weakest version of yourself, gets to hijack your mind without a damn good reason. That's discipline. That's power. And that's the first foundation to rebuilding your life. When you start to reclaim inch by inch of your mental ground, when you stop letting irrational emotions dictate your behavior, when you're no longer swayed by the noise out there, that's when you begin to live as a free man. You'll still get disappointed, betrayed, defeated, but you won't collapse from it, because you won't be reacting like a slave anymore. You'll be responding like a man in control. And that's real freedom. Not the right to do anything, but the ability to remain unmoved by everything you didn't choose. Once you understand that, the next step becomes clear. To be free, you don't need more. You need to let go. Not surrender, but drop what was never yours to carry, so you can hold on to the one thing that's always been yours, your will. And that's where we go next. You've been lied to. Society told you freedom means doing whatever you like, living without limits, going wherever, sleeping with whoever, dropping anything the moment it no longer makes you happy. But take a closer look. Modern freedom is just turning you into a confused soul who can choose everything, Accept peace. You don't need more freedom. You need less. Less distraction, fewer pointless choices, less effort spent trying to please the world, so you can finally focus on the only thing that matters: who you are and what the hell you're here for. The Stoics didn't measure freedom by money, free speech, or how much pleasure you could indulge in. They measured it by one thing: are you dependent on anything outside your control? You say you want freedom, but be honest, could you turn off your phone for 24 hours? Could you log off social media for a week without feeling deprived? Could you sit in silence and face yourself? Or are you afraid? Afraid of silence? Afraid of being alone? Afraid of the feeling that you're doing nothing? Because your mind is used to being hijacked. It's like a house with its doors flung wide open 24/7. Ads, memes, news, random internet friends, everyone waltzes in and out like they own the place. And you call it connection. It's not. It's intrusion. Epictetus once warned, be careful what images you let into your head, because once they're in, they rule you. Everything you consume leaves a mark. One meaningless video can plant a hidden inferiority complex. One comparison photo can grow into envy. One offhand criticism can throw you off course for an entire month. And you let all of it happen. Because you don't realize, focus is your most valuable asset, not because it makes you more productive, but because it's the only gateway to real freedom. When you focus, you choose. When you choose, you hold power. And when you hold power, you control your life. No more automatic reactions. No more being led. No more living like a twig in a raging river. Freedom is being able to ignore 99 meaningless things screaming in your face to do the one thing that actually matters. Freedom is seeing someone succeed and not being shaken. Freedom is facing failure without collapsing because you know failure is just a fraction, not your entire identity. But you don't get that kind of freedom unless you learn to say no. No to what distracts you, no to compliments you don't need, no to cheap attention, no to other people's expectations. Not because you hate the world, but because you love yourself enough to guard your inner silence. You don't let just anyone grab the wheel of your life. If your mind feels like it's being yanked in a dozen directions every day, if you're starting to realize you've lost the ability to focus, to go deep, this is your wake-up call. Not to panic, but to wake the hell up. Only when you reclaim your focus can you enter the place the Stoics called ataraxia, an unshakable inner stillness. Not because life gets easier, but because you no longer get dragged every time it gets hard. And from that place, you can step into the storm with the posture of someone who's ready. Because freedom isn't about running from the fight. Freedom is choosing where you'll stand and why you'll fight. Now ask yourself again, what am I focusing on? And am I really living for it? Or am I just running in circles to avoid facing the truth? If you're ready, we'll move on to the next part, where emotions stop being your master and start becoming your servant. You think others hurt you, but the truth is, you let them. No one can drive you crazy unless you've given them permission to. And sadly, you hand over that permission like it's no big deal. You let your emotions get yanked around by empty words, cold stares, dismissive nods from people who don't matter. You live like one rude comment is enough to ruin your whole damn day. You get angry, you get sad, you get anxious. Then you tell yourself, I'm only human. But here's what you don't get. Being human doesn't mean being a slave to your emotions. Humans also have reason. You just threw yours out a long time ago. You let instinct run the show. You let everything control you except yourself. You know what's most dangerous? Not the insult. It's your reaction to it, like it somehow defines you. Some idiot calls you a failure, and you believe it. A stranger breezes through your life, does something awful, and you carry that pain for months. You live with it, sleep with it, let it eat you alive from the inside. The Stoics had a very clear rule: never let emotion lead. Emotion isn't the enemy, but it's not the boss either. It's just a signal, like pain telling you something's wrong. But you don't stop there. You let it take over. You let it blind you. You react without thinking. You lash out from anger. You shout because you feel disrespected. And every time you do, you fall deeper into the spiral. The more you react, the weaker you get. The weaker you are, the more you react. Mastering your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them. No one's telling you to bottle up your anger or sadness, but you need to acknowledge them without obeying them. You're allowed to feel hurt, but you're not obligated to act like you've been ripped apart. You can feel angry, but that doesn't give you the right to lose control. If someone can make you snap just by saying a sentence, you're not strong. You're easy to manipulate. You're that giant red button on the sidewalk that anyone can press whenever they want. You say you want control over your life, but you can't even control a damn temper. You say you've got goals, you've got principles, but you throw them out the window because someone disagreed with you on the internet. You want respect from others, but you can't even respect your own emotions. Emotional mastery is the first and last thing you need to build any kind of value in your life. Without it, everything else is soap bubbles. And the scariest part is, you know this, but you're doing nothing. You still react like a child. You still blame others for hurting you. You keep replaying that same old victim act over and over. You think saying, "I'm just sensitive," gives you a pass for losing control. No, it's just your excuse to keep being weak, and life doesn't honor that forever. One day the world will hit you for real, not with words, but with a storm, with loss, with betrayal, loneliness, despair. And when that day comes, if you haven't learned to master your emotions, you will collapse. Not because the storm is too big, but because you're too fragile. Mastering emotion isn't about meditation or reading philosophy books. It's about looking yourself in the eye, your anger, your fear, your insecurity, and refusing to let them drag you around anymore. It's about denying anyone the right to live rent-free in your head. As long as you blame the world for how you feel, you haven't grown up. As long as you say, "I can't help it," you haven't really lived. As long as you're easily dragged into drama, into impulsive outbursts, you're not ready for freedom. You can't own your life if you can't even own your mood. And if you still think someone else hurt you, maybe you don't understand real strength at all. You don't suffer because the world is unfair. You suffer because you expect it to be fair. You're not in pain because of what happened. You're in pain because it didn't happen the way you wanted. Since you were a kid, you were taught that if you do the right thing, if you try hard, if you live decently, everything will work out. You believed in fairness like it was some universal law. But the world doesn't run on fairness. It runs on its own terms. Cold, random, and completely indifferent to your expectations. And you can't handle that. You get angry when you're rejected even after trying your best. You feel crushed when you're betrayed even though you were sincere. You get bitter when someone else gets more despite you working harder. But what you don't see is that you built your own pain by demanding that life follow the scripts you made up in your head. The Stoics didn't place expectations on the world. They accepted it as it is. When it rains, they don't curse the clouds, they wear a coat. When betrayed, they don't rage against the betrayer. They see it as part of human nature. When everything falls apart, they don't sit there crying. They act on what they can control. You think acceptance means giving up. That's only because you don't understand it. Giving up is abandoning yourself. Acceptance is abandoning the illusion. It's the act of stopping the fight against reality and pouring all your strength into the only thing that can change: how you respond. Every time you expect something, you're tightening a noose around your own neck. You're saying, "I'll only be at peace if things go exactly like this." But life didn't sign that contract. It owes you nothing. And if you're not prepared to receive the opposite of what you wanted, you'll be crushed by your own demands. Freedom doesn't come when everything goes your way. It comes when you no longer need it to. When you can look at a setback and say, "That's fine too." When you can hear a rejection and think, "Then I'll take another path." When you stop living in the hunger to be fulfilled, recognized, treated the way you think you deserve, that's when you become strong. Epictetus once said, "Don't wish for things to happen as you want. Wish for them to happen exactly as they do. And you will be at peace." Not because he was numb, but because he knew expectations are the seeds of disappointment, while acceptance is the soil of power. You can live your whole life in the illusion that the world owes you something. Or you can wake the hell up and start living as a free man. Free from expectations, free from inner resistance, free from that ego screaming, I should have had more. And once you start living that way, everything changes. Not because the world suddenly becomes kinder, but because you stop demanding it to be. You're no longer weak in the face of reality's punch. You no longer panic when plans fall apart. You're no longer dragged around by the current. You stand tall. And that's when your life truly begins. Not when everything goes the way you drew it up, but when everything falls apart and you can still smile. This isn't just a video. This is the reminder you needed today. Hit subscribe and like if you want someone in your corner, pushing you to live by your real values. Only when you're pushed to your limits do you discover what's really inside you. Only when the world turns its back, trust is betrayed, plans collapse, and no one's left beside you, only then do you meet the rawest version of yourself. No mask, no illusion, no performance. You can claim to be strong when life is smooth, when work flows, when friends cheer you on. But it's when everything breaks down that you find out if you're truly a man or just a boy life has pampered. Strength isn't born from comfort. It's forged in brutality. Hercules didn't become a legend by living in luxury. He walked into challenges, fought monsters, was betrayed, was punished, and he didn't bow. It was adversity that made him a myth. No one grows through easy days. No real lesson ever comes from easy wins. You're hoping life gets easier? Then you'll never develop grit. You want everything to go your way? Then you'll stay weak. Because you only find out what you're made of when everything is stripped away. And if you haven't been through that, you're still an unfinished draft. The Stoics didn't go looking for suffering, but they welcomed it like a blacksmith welcomes fire. No fire, no steel. No trial, no glory. They knew pain is where your will is exposed, where principles stop being theory and become blood and bone. You don't forge yourself through feel-good quotes, motivational videos, or comforting books. You have to step into the fire. Let chaos smash the fragile parts of you. Let failure rip off the fake layers you used to wear. And then, when you still get up, you finally know who you are. Adversity doesn't kill you. It only strips away what isn't strong enough to survive. It forces you to choose. Keep crumbling or become who you know you could be if you just had the guts to endure. You want ease? Then you'll never have depth. You want convenience? Then you'll spend life stuck in a mediocre comfort zone. But if you dare to face it, without whining, without running, you'll grow in a way no words can describe. You'll carry the eyes of someone who's walked through fire. You'll have the spine of someone who refuses to kneel. You won't need applause because you'll have already proven it to yourself. And that's the only thing that truly counts. Pain is the test, and fate is a cold-blooded examiner. No bonus points for effort. Only results. Did you stand or not? No one cares how many excuses you have for falling. They only see one thing. Are you still moving? If you're in the middle of a crisis, if it feels like everything is crushing you, don't pray for it to end. Pray for the strength to walk through it. Because if you can do that, you won't just survive, you'll become the man you used to admire. And one day, when you look back, you'll know. It wasn't success, but adversity. That was your greatest teacher. When life slams you to the ground, what do most people do? Complain, feel sorry for themselves, blame, look for an enemy, look for someone to accuse. But what about you? What will you do? Will you run around begging for a handout? Or will you sit down in silence and dig deep within yourself to find the one thing that can actually save you, inner strength? The truth is, no one really knows how strong they are until being strong is their only choice. You don't know how much you can endure until life corners you. No money, no options, no support. Those moments aren't just trials. They're opportunities. That's where the old self gets peeled back, the fake layers get burned off, and your real identity finally gets called out. The Stoics never said to wish for tragedy, but they taught that when it hits, and it will, you must turn inward. Not to pray, not to wait for salvation, but to ask yourself, what do I have in here that I've never used? You think inner strength is some mystical force, some light that appears when you're ready. No. Inner strength is a part of you that's always been there. You just haven't dug deep enough to find it. It's buried under comfort, under the cozy little routines you call stability, under the dust of small compromises you make every day to avoid pain. But hardship doesn't let you hide anymore. It strips you bare. And in that nakedness, you only have two choices: collapse or dig. The strong aren't born with some rare ability. They're the ones who, when life turned vicious, chose to tear through every dark corner inside and search for a reason to keep going. And they found it. Maybe you've never thought of yourself as strong. That's only because you've never had to be. You've lived safe enough to avoid staring into your own cracks. But eventually, life won't give you that luxury. And when that day comes, know this: you can take more than you think. The real question is, do you have the guts to go all the way? You've been rejected, you've failed, you've lost, you've hurt, but you're still here. Maybe broken, maybe exhausted, but still here. And that says something undeniable. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for. If you've made it through everything you once thought was unbearable, then you're not weak. You just haven't truly recognized your own strength. When you hit rock bottom, don't look outside for something to lift you. Look inward and ask, what haven't I tapped into yet? What did I abandon because I thought I wasn't good enough? What dreams did I bury because the world said they were impossible? The Stoics called it radical self-responsibility. Not just controlling your emotions, but owning your entire comeback. No one's going to lift you. No one's coming to cheer you on. No one needs to approve. You were knocked down. Now it's your job to get up or stay crushed. You don't have to be a superhero. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to believe that inside you, there's a part the world can't touch. A part harder than stone, quieter than wind, steadier than any storm life throws at you. And that part is who you really are. Once you've stripped away all the lies. I don't know what part of hardship you're in right now. Maybe you're unemployed, brokenhearted, lost in life, or just numbed out by it all. Wherever you are, if you're still reading these words, then there's still a part of you that hasn't surrendered. That's where you place your bet. The world out there will stay cold. No one's coming to fix your life. But if you're brave enough to sit down, stay silent, face yourself, and say, I will not die here, then you've already won. Not against the world, but against the fear that's turned millions into walking corpses. Remember this: you are not your circumstance. You are how you respond to it. And the strength you need has never lived anywhere else but inside you. When life beats you down, go inward, not to escape, but to find the only thing that can save you: grit. No one gives it to you, but if you dig deep enough, you'll see it never left. No one walks out of a storm the same person they were going in. Pain doesn't just hurt you, it restructures you. It dismantles every part of your former self, smashes every belief you clung to, and forces you to choose: either be reborn or fall apart. The problem is, most people choose wrong. They try to cling to their old selves, as if enduring long enough will bring everything back to how it used to be. But there is no how it used to be anymore. After a major upheaval, you can't go back to who you were, and you shouldn't want to, because the pre-storm version of you was too weak to face life. That's why you crumbled in the first place. The Stoics knew this well. To them, change isn't something to avoid, it's something necessary. You can't control everything outside you, but you can control how you evolve from it. Every failure is a chance to cut off something excess within yourself. Every time you're abandoned, betrayed, or beaten down is a chance to test whether the core of you is solid enough to survive. You're the one who built the illusions about yourself, that you were kind, strong, valuable. But when the real test comes, all that paint gets stripped away. What remains is the truth. And if you have the guts, you won't just accept it. You'll use it to build a new self, deeper, sharper, more worthy of respect. Pain is a signal that your old self isn't enough anymore. You can live the same way if you want to replay the same tragedy. Or you can evolve and let everything outdated, including your outdated self, die. Growth doesn't come from time. It comes from your willingness to kill the obsolete version of yourself to let something stronger rise. Remember, you're not static. You're a current. Every storm is a deep cut. And if you know how to endure it without resistance, you'll grow in a way that comfortable will never understand. No one comes out of a crisis still as weak as they were going in, unless they refuse to learn what they needed to. If you're in the middle of the storm, don't just pray for it to pass. Ask, what part of me do I need to throw away? What must I change in how I live, think, love, or exist? You can't control the wind, but you can adjust the sail. And sometimes you need to tear the old sail to build a new one. Stronger, tougher, truly yours. And one day when you look back, you'll be grateful for that storm. Not because it was pleasant, but because it forged you into who you were born to be. You don't walk out of a storm to return to who you were. You walk out to become something new, something different, more fearsome, more resilient. And you'll know, without that breaking point, you'd never have truly lived. We're taught that happiness comes after the struggle, that we must suffer first, then find peace later. But that's wrong. Not because peace doesn't come, but because it won't come if you keep fighting reality. You can't wait for the storm to pass to learn how to smile, because life will keep throwing one storm after another at you. If you wait for things to settle down, you'll be waiting forever. The secret isn't to hope for calm seas, it's to learn how to stay calm while the sea is raging. The Stoics called this ataraxia, a state of mind that stays unshaken even when the world is collapsing around you. But that state doesn't come from pretending to be calm. It comes from discipline, from accepting that pain is part of living, and if you're alive, you will hurt many more times. Smiling through the storm isn't the foolish act of a numb person. It's the choice of someone who understands that emotional outbursts won't save anyone. When everything around you is chaos, the person who can keep a composed face is the one in command. Winston Churchill once said, "If you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop, don't scream, don't curse your fate. Keep walking, with heavy feet, with a worn-out body, but with your head held high and your mind clear. Because only by moving forward will you get to the other side." Smiling doesn't make the pain go away, but it makes you stronger than the pain. It gives you something to stand on, not blind hope, but a deliberate choice about how you will exist in hardship. No whining, no begging, no weakness. And the beautiful thing is, every storm passes. But when it does, the real question isn't, did it destroy you? It's, did you keep your composure while it passed through? Don't waste your suffering. Use it to forge your will. Use it to sharpen your focus, discipline, and courage. Learn to smile not because life is easy, but because you've become steady. So if you're in a dark moment, don't wait for light. Be the light. Even if it's just a faint flicker at first, that flicker is you. Your awareness, your strength, keeping yourself from breaking in the chaos. And that conscious presence is what will carry you through the storm. No one teaches you how to smile through pain, but if you learn it, you'll never fear storms again, because you'll know you don't need the world to be calm. You just need to hold your ground. And with that, life will never break you. You can read hundreds of books, hear thousands of pieces of advice, watch countless motivational videos, but none of it will change you as deeply as a real failure. Not a minor stumble. A full-on faceplant into the concrete, painful beyond words. People learn the fastest when they're in pain. When you're sitting safely in your comfort zone, you can excuse every mistake, blame your circumstances, and coast through life on half-baked beliefs. But when adversity hits, it doesn't ask if you're ready. It doesn't care if you're fragile. It does one thing: it strips you bare. And in that rawness, you finally begin to change. The Stoics never romanticized suffering, but they knew this. Without adversity, you'll never know who you really are. When life is easy, anyone can pretend to be kind, pretend to be strong, pretend to have principles. But in hardship, the pretending dies, and what's left is your core. That's why adversity isn't your enemy, it's an exam. And it asks you one brutally clear question. Are you worthy of what you're asking for? You want love, but are you mature enough to hold it when it doesn't go your way? You want success, but are you ready to pay the price when the doors slam shut more often than they open? You want peace, but are you disciplined enough to reject the noise? Let go of your emotional addictions and take full responsibility for your own stillness. If the answer is no, then adversity is your mandatory classroom. It will keep teaching the lesson until you learn it. And if you keep refusing to learn, you'll keep hurting, breaking, blaming life, when really it's you who hasn't gotten serious yet. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. You can't avoid betrayal, loss, disappointment, but you can choose not to resist it. You can choose to learn from it, grow from it, and become untouchable from the inside out. Running from pain won't erase it. It just builds up, mutates, and waits to explode later. On the other hand, facing pain, not as a victim, but as a warrior, is the only way to be free. Every time you dare to stare pain in the face, you reclaim a piece of strength you lost by living too easy. Adversity, if you let it do its job, will teach you what no one else can. True humility, quiet resilience, and the ability to stand your ground when everything around you is falling apart. You don't need to love adversity, but you need to respect it. It's the teacher you never liked, but owe everything to. Because after every time it knocks you down, you get back up, slower but steadier. And that's how you become someone who doesn't fall so easily anymore. And if one day life feels too light, too smooth, don't celebrate too quickly. Ask yourself, am I growing? Or am I just asleep? Because only one of those is true. And if you really want to live fully, you'll understand. Adversity isn't the end. It's the beginning of everything that's worth it. Life doesn't ask questions, it presents situations, and how you respond is the answer. Hardship doesn't show up to punish you. It shows up to test whether you're worthy of what you say you want. Everyone wants success, love, respect, but how many are actually willing to pay for it? With commitment, discipline, and endurance. You can say you have goals, but when exhaustion hits, do you rest, or do you keep going? You can say you love someone, but when they're flawed, do you accept them, or walk away? You can claim to live by principles, but when that costs you something, do you hold the line, or do you fold? Hardship comes to rip off the mask. It doesn't care what you say, it watches what you do. It can't be bought with promises. It can't be fooled by slogans. It's the arena of the real, where all fakes get burned to ash. The Stoics saw life as a series of tests with no grades, only outcomes. You either pass or you don't. And if you don't, you're not damned. You're just sent back to learn it again until you're ready for the next level. You can avoid hardship by living shallow, aimless, non-committed. But if you do, you're also avoiding the chance to grow. You're trading ease today for emptiness tomorrow. And eventually, that bill will come due, one way or another. A life without challenge is a life without proof of your value. You might live long, live quietly, but leave nothing behind. But a person who dares to step into hardship, take risks, and live by principle, even if they fall 1,000 times, is building something unbreakable. Character. Hardship doesn't just test strength, it tests your loyalty to yourself. When you're hurt, do you stay kind? When you're betrayed, do you hold your dignity? When you're left behind, do you keep moving forward without turning bitter? If you do, you don't just pass the test, you redefine who you are. You're no longer someone who just survives. You're someone who turns every setback into material for inner strength. And if you fall, good. The test doesn't ask for perfection. It only asks, do you get back up? One more time? Then again, and each time you rely less on the world, less on circumstances, and become just a little more unshakable. Hardship doesn't make you, but it strips away everything that isn't really you, so what's left is your core. And if you tend to that long enough, it becomes the foundation of your life, solid, steady, untouchable. So next time hardship knocks, don't ask, why me? Ask, am I ready for this test? And if the answer is no, then start learning. Not through books, but by living real. You can learn skills from books, you can gain knowledge from school, but character, the real measure of a person's worth, is forged only through pain, failure, and experiences no one willingly signs up for. No exceptions. No one is born resilient. No one is born with integrity. No one is born calm in chaos. All of that is the result of being sharpened. Just as diamonds are formed under extreme pressure deep within the earth, People only become refined when they're pushed to their limits. We live in an age that worships comfort. Everyone wants results, but no one wants to pay the price. They want grit, but avoid the situations that demand grit. They want respect, but won't live by their principles when no one's watching. That's why true character is rare, because no one's willing to walk through the fire to earn it. The Stoics never spoke of character as something lofty. To them, character is how you act when no one's cheering you on, when everything's stacked against you. When your chosen path is one you walk alone. It's when you could cheat and no one would ever find out, but you don't. When you could complain, but instead stay silent and keep going. When you could quit, but grit your teeth and press on. Fire doesn't just expose weakness, it burns away the unnecessary. If you've ever felt real pain, you know this. You begin to shed the meaningless things you once clung to, half-hearted relationships, impulsive ambitions, the need for validation. All of it disappears when you're faced with the only thing that truly matters. Who are you when there's nothing left to lean on? True character isn't cold indifference, and it's not grandstanding. It's quiet, the way you keep a promise even when no one's reminding you. The calm in how you handle crisis, even when you're trembling like everyone else. The honesty in your internal dialogue where you don't sugarcoat your flaws just to feel better. And here's the paradox. The higher your character, the harder your life becomes. Because you won't compromise easily. You'll reject shortcuts, empty promises, and instant gratification. You'll choose what's right over what's easy, and what's right always hurts more. But that's the price if you want to become someone you won't hate in the mirror. Not perfect, but trustworthy. Not easygoing, but respectable. Not someone craving pity, but someone willing to carry the weight others avoid. If you're in the fire, don't run from it. Stand still. Breathe deep. Let it do its work. Burn off the fakery, the illusions, the hunger for praise. And when the ashes settle, you'll see what's left. And that part, if you dare to hold on to it, is the real you. No pressure, no diamond, no fire, no character. If you want to become something of value, be ready to endure like something that had none. Because in the end, the world doesn't lack success. It lacks people with enough backbone to live with decency, integrity, and consistency, even when no one applauds them for it. We often think of ourselves as good people, strong people, principled people, when things are going fine. But the truth is, you don't know who you are until things start to fall apart. Anyone can be polite when respected, anyone can be patient when the road is smooth, anyone can be kind when nothing is at stake. But when you're shoved into poverty, betrayal, humiliation, isolation, rock bottom, that's when the real you steps into the light. You can't fake it for long in pain. Fear, despair, anger, they strip off every mask. And if there's nothing under those masks but emptiness, you'll collapse. But if there's even a sliver of steel inside you, that's where you start rebuilding. The Stoics never judged people by words or reputation. They waited to see how they reacted when life knocked them down. That's the real test. Not what you do with power, but what you do when you've got nothing left. Some people thought they were strong, until life kicked them out of their comfort zone. One setback, and they're screaming, panicking, blaming everyone. Some thought they were moral until faced with the chance to lie and get away with it. Some thought they loved someone until that person got weak or unattractive and they left without a second thought. Adversity doesn't change you, it reveals who you really are. If you've lived through a dark time, you remember exactly how you responded. Did you fight or flee, stand firm or fold, tell the truth or hide from it? And when you recall that moment, you won't be able to lie to yourself, because those moments etched the truth into your mind. Not the version you wish were true, but the one you chose. If you didn't like what you saw in those moments, good. Shame is the first flame of transformation. You've got to be dissatisfied with yourself before you'll truly change. Not with empty promises, but by confronting who you are. No excuses, no blame, no dodging. Here's the truth. The walls of life don't block your path. They block out the ones who don't want it bad enough. When you truly want something, you'll find a way. When you just like the idea of it, you'll find an excuse. Adversity will ask you, how bad do you really want it? And if you can't answer with action, then your answer is no. Want to become someone else? Stronger, deeper, more capable? Then thank the hard days. Walk into them like a warrior, not expecting an easy fight, but ready to test yourself. Because every time you push through, you reclaim a part of yourself that got soft in comfort. No one will see you grow, but you'll feel it. In the way you handle anger, in the way you stay silent when insulted, in the way you rise after falling. And one day, you'll face the same kind of storm as before and realize you're no longer the same person. Not because life got easier, but because you got heavier. And that only happens when you're brave enough to walk into adversity and let it strip you to the bone. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you find this video helpful. It's the best way to support me in creating more valuable content. Everything you're looking for, courage, discipline, confidence, direction, is not out there. It's not in a mentor, not in a book, not in luck, not in your environment. It's inside you. The problem is, you don't believe that. Or worse, you've never seriously tried to find it. You live like someone owes you a push to get started, like the world needs to give you enough time, enough money, enough peace before you can become yourself. That's the most beautiful illusion, and also the weakest excuse modern people use to lull themselves to sleep. Have you ever asked yourself, if nothing changes around me, can I still move forward from within? The Stoics taught that everything external is secondary. Fame, success, power, they're all reflections of internal strength. Without it, you'll always be toppled by the smallest thing. A rejection, a criticism, a temporary failure. But if you build strength from within, no one can take it from you. Think back to the times you thought you were done for. You've lived through pain you thought would break you. You've suffered losses you thought you'd never get up from. But you're still here. Not flawless, not intact, but alive. And that fact alone proves there's something inside you powerful enough to drag you through the rubble you once thought was the end. The issue is, you've never sat down long enough to listen to that part of you. You've been too busy chasing noise, comparing, feeding outside cravings, forgetting that the only part of you that can truly stand up to the world is the part you've never named, your inner grit. You can't control outcomes, but you can always control your response. No one teaches you how to hold your head high after humiliation. No one shows you how to move forward after losing everything. Those aren't in any curriculum. They only show up when life forces you to be strong or be swallowed. And the irony is, those moments when you have nothing left are the ones where you finally meet your real self. No performance, no social media, no one to impress. Just you and your own breath. And if you dare to listen, you'll realize this. You've never been as weak as you thought. You've just never been cornered long enough to find out how deep your strength really runs. Failure is not the end. It's a map, pointing you back to your core. It shows you what you haven't built yet, what you've neglected, what needs attention. And every time you rise from a fall, you lay another brick on that inner foundation. The world won't stop testing you, but you don't need a gentler world. You need a tougher self. Because what's inside you is always greater than what's in front of you. And if you move forward with that belief, no trial can ever truly break you. No one's coming to save you. There is no right time, no perfect inspiration. There's only you. And if you're brave enough to look inward, quiet enough to hear the call from your deepest self, you'll know that's where strength begins. And nothing, no one, can ever take that from you. Most people see challenges as injustice. They complain, they run, they wait for it to pass. They believe that if they're good enough, kind enough, hardworking enough, life will return the favor. But here's the truth. Life doesn't run on feelings. It runs on principles. And one of the harshest principles is this. Every ounce of growth comes at the price of discomfort. If you're still avoiding challenges, you're not ready to grow. There's no breaking through yourself without collision. There's no transformation without tearing. Every pain, every failure, every moment that feels out of control is an invitation. Do you want to live fully or keep hiding in the safety zone? You think challenges are the enemy, but they're the only thing standing between you and your best self. They're not here to destroy you. They're here to ask, are you worthy of what you're demanding? The Stoics saw challenges differently. They didn't ask, why me? They asked, what can I forge from this? When a plane takes off, it has to fly against the wind. Not because someone hates it, but because that's the only way to gain lift. People are the same. If you only go with the flow, you'll never rise. You complain that life's too harsh, no one's helping, everything's against you. Good. That's the signal you're in the right place. The place where real growth happens. You can keep hating it or start learning from it. Two choices, two very different lives. The weak look at challenges and think, this shouldn't be happening. The strong look at challenges and say, it's happening, now I need to get better. That difference is why one group stays stuck, while the other rises with every fall. If you're waiting for your circumstances to change before you change, you'll be waiting forever. But if you change how you see your circumstances, you'll realize everything has always been a lesson, not a punishment. Ask anyone who's done something meaningful. They won't talk about the calm days. They'll talk about betrayal, rejection, being backed into a corner, and how they used all of it as leverage. Not because they were special, but because they stopped seeing challenges as enemies. They saw them as the raw materials for growth. You can stay in your comfort zone, but there, you'll always be a half version of yourself. You'll never know what you really have, because you've never pushed yourself to the edge. And if you've never pushed yourself, you can't be truly confident, because you've never faced it, never been tested, never witnessed your own survival. Challenges don't end your life. They end the illusion that you can keep going without changing. And once you flip that perspective, challenges stop being obstacles. They become runways. Remember, challenges don't care what you want. They only ask one thing. How much are you willing to endure to become who you claim to be? And that's a question only you can answer. Every damn day. There's a quiet pain many men carry their whole lives but never speak of. The pain of knowing they were wrong, made the wrong choices, lived the wrong life, yet lacked the courage to begin again. So they keep walking the old path, clinging to a decaying ego, just to avoid facing the cost of rebirth. You don't need more time, you don't need more advice, you just need the courage to admit that some things need to be thrown away. Some relationships no longer fit. Some dreams are outdated. Some versions of yourself you outgrew long ago, but still cling to out of fear of emptiness. The Stoics never advocated living in regret, but they didn't romanticize starting over either. They knew rebirth is a violent act. It doesn't come gently. It comes when you stare down the truth, that if you don't begin again, you won't die physically, but you will rot spiritually. Starting over doesn't mean throwing everything away. It means looking at everything with new eyes. Asking the questions you were once too afraid to face. What am I really living for? Where am I going? Do I actually respect myself? Maybe you built a life only to realize it was never truly yours. Maybe you chased an image that others wanted you to be. Maybe you invested in a path that only made you feel more lost the further you went. That's okay. You're allowed to be wrong, but you're also responsible for stopping. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. It's shedding the past you once clung to and making space for a version of yourself that's better, deeper, rougher, but real. It's standing amid the ashes of who you used to be, not with a fake smile, but with eyes that have seen the truth. Only when everything collapses do you finally get a chance to build something worthwhile. The world will never hand you the perfect moment to start over. It will always be chaotic, noisy, full of distractions and temptations. But if you can silence the noise and listen to that voice inside, you'll find a narrow path, too tight for anyone else to fit through, but just wide enough for you to step into, if you truly want to. New beginnings don't come from the outside. They start with a cold, clear decision. I will no longer live a life I no longer respect. And from that moment on, you won't need anyone to push you, because the old pain will be deep enough to turn into fuel, because you know that if you don't do this, you'll spend the rest of your life buried in mediocrity. There is no salvation coming from outside. No one's coming to change your life. But you can, right now. No permission needed, No perfect plan required, just one step, then another, and another. Each step pulling you out of the rotting shell you've locked yourself in for years. You are not fixed. You are not trapped in any one definition. You are a current. You are a process. And every time you dare to start over, you're proving to yourself, I didn't die in that old version. I'm willing to become something stronger, more honest, even if it costs me loneliness and uncertainty. That's not collapse, that's liberation, and you know it. You just need the courage to do what you've always known you had to do. Start over. You'll never know fullness until you've known hunger. You can't truly cherish sunlight until you've shivered through winter. Life only gains meaning when set against its opposites. Without pain, happiness is just hollow laughter. Without loss, someone's presence is just a dull, assumed convenience. This is what the weak never accept. They want happiness without sorrow, love without hurt, success without failure. They want life to be easy, smooth, effortless, and complain when it's not. But if life actually worked that way, it would rob them of the chance to grow. The Stoics understood that beauty cannot be separated from brutality. Joy has no depth if not built upon suffering. The peace you feel after a storm isn't the same as peace that was always there. A hug after heartbreak doesn't feel like the hug of someone who's never lost. Meaning isn't in the feeling, it's in the path that got you there. Think about it. If everything in your life came easy, who would you become? Someone dependent, someone ungrateful, someone shallow, lacking empathy, with no reason to strive. And maybe that's exactly what's happened to many people today. They've lived in comfort so long that even the meaningful feels meaningless. Not because life hasn't given them anything, but because it gave too easily. Contrast is what creates real emotion. We don't need a flawless life, we need a life with texture. With loss, so we learn to hold on. With failure, so we appreciate the win. With loneliness, so we understand the worth of a hand to hold. And once we grasp that, we stop blaming adversity, stop resisting reality, stop living like the world owes us some ideal version of itself. Have you ever lost someone? Stood at their funeral and wished you had 5 more minutes to say what you never did? Had a simple dinner bring you to tears because you finally saw how precious it was? That's contrast, and you don't learn it from books. You have to live it, to lose, to break, to go numb in ruins, only to realize I had everything and didn't know it. That's a lesson reserved for those who've suffered, and it's what gives you depth, makes you real, makes you trustworthy in a way that untouched souls never can be. Prosperity is only sweet when you've tasted loss. Peace is only precious when you've spent enough time in chaos. And this contrast, every cut of it, every sleepless night, every time you collapsed, is what makes you meaningful. Not just alive, but truly aware of what you're living for. So next time you're in pain, remember, you're being shaped, not to be broken, but to understand, to see the real value in what you have and what's still coming. Without darkness, the sun is just a ball of fire, but to someone who's been lost in night, it's a miracle. And if you're in the dark right now, stay, keep walking. Because the light at the end isn't just the end of a hard chapter. It's the rebirth of you, with new eyes, a new heart, and a life you'll never again take for granted. There's something few people will say out loud, but you and I both know it's true. Not everyone who falls gets back up. Some people fall once and stay down forever. Not because they can't rise, but because they choose not to. They tell themselves, life is unfair, I'm not lucky enough, this is more than I can handle. And just like that, they quit. Not in some dramatic act, but through a slow, silent decay stretched across years. But you can't let yourself stay down. Because every time you accept stopping, you're telling yourself, I'm not worth continuing. And that is the most vicious lie you can ever plant in your own mind. Stoicism never promised the road would be easy. It paints no rosy pictures, sells no cheap optimism. It says one thing, keep going no matter what. You don't need to take big steps. You don't need to be strong the entire way. You just need to keep moving. You just need to make sure the pain doesn't pull you backward. Friction polishes the gem. Without grinding, pressure, and failure, you'll always be just a lump of raw stone. You'll never find out what you're truly capable of if you always avoid the hard situations. It's only when you dare to try, to fall, to fail, that you prove you're alive. Not just surviving, but living. Every time you take another step, even confused, even exhausted, you're affirming to yourself, I'm worth believing in. You're not perfect, but you don't quit. And that's what separates the grown man from the eternal victim. Life doesn't care how many times you've fallen. It only tracks whether you're still going. You can fail 10 times, 20 times, it doesn't matter. What matters is that on the 21st try, you still lift your foot. Not because you're sure you'll succeed, but because you refuse to let failure define who you are. Moving forward isn't a slogan. It's a bitter choice, often lonely, uncelebrated, with no applause. But it's the foundation of all transformation. You want to change? You want to build grit? You want a life with depth and weight? Then walk. Feeling pain is okay, feeling drained is okay, even wanting to quit is okay. Just don't let those feelings make decisions for you. Let action lead. And the most basic, most crucial action is this. Keep going. Not everyone will understand you, not everyone will support you, not every door will open. But if you just keep stepping, you'll outlast 99% of the people who are smarter, luckier, but lack the will. And one day, when you look back, you won't see only victories. You'll see scars, dragged footsteps, days you thought were the end. But through all that, you'll see one thing. You didn't quit. And that alone is reason enough to hold your head high. Not because you've reached the destination, but because you're still walking. And the one who's still walking always has a chance. Everyone goes through pain. But not everyone goes through it well. Some people come out of suffering deeper, calmer, stronger. Others come out bitter, closed off, afraid of everything. Pain doesn't decide who you become, how you face it does. Stoicism never denied that life can be brutal, but it also never allowed the self to sink into victimhood. The Stoics understood, it's not what you endure, but how you endure it. You can be betrayed, deceived, beaten down. But if you hold your dignity, your discipline, your compassion, then you still win. On the flip side, if you let pain poison you, if you let bitterness lead, if you let loss turn you numb, then even if you survive, you lose. Because you didn't grow, you just shut down. You didn't become stronger, you just froze. There's a certain kind of man, you know him not by his words, but by his eyes. The look of someone who's been through fire. Not metaphorical fire meant for some self-help cliche, but real fire. Despair, loss, being pushed to the brink. And not only did he survive, he came back with his heart intact. He's not colder, just less delusional. You can become that man. But you have to choose. If you're going to walk through fire, don't walk out empty-handed. Take the lesson, take the essence, take the truth that says, I was burned, but I am not ash. Don't let your suffering be meaningless. Don't let your losses become just a list of misfortunes. Give it meaning by living differently, acting differently, loving differently. Make it worth it by becoming someone who can look back and say, I didn't waste a second of that storm. So if you're in the fire, stay there long enough to learn what you need to learn. Let it burn away the masks, the weak beliefs, the things you've clung to just to avoid emptiness. And when you step out, you won't just be a survivor, you'll be forged. True strength doesn't come from being protected. It comes from being thrust into pain and still holding on to your best self. And if you can do that, you'll never fear the fire again, because you'll know, I've walked through it, and I know who I am in the flames. No one escapes pain. But some emerge with clenched fists, deeper eyes, thicker hearts, and others emerge with nothing but a long list of people to blame. Who you become, that's not fate. That's in how you respond today. If you have to endure, make it worth enduring. If you have to hurt, learn what you must. If you have to walk through fire, walk like a warrior, not a victim. That's the only way to turn suffering into glory. Most people don't live honestly with themselves, not because they're evil, but because they're terrified. Terrified of facing the weak parts inside. Terrified of admitting failure, terrified of confronting the truth. That some dreams are dead, some relationships are rotting, and some habits are quietly wrecking their lives, day by day. So they bury it. They shove fear beneath forced laughter, hide the past under a mountain of busy work, wrap their helplessness in a shell of moral posturing. They think that's moving on, but it's not. It's delay. And the truth you deny doesn't vanish. It just waits, more vicious and more toxic when it returns. The Stoics didn't live that way. They never turned away from truth. No matter how brutal, they faced it, because they understood. Only those brave enough to look their wounds in the eye can ever heal them. And nothing is more dangerous than someone pretending to be okay while rotting inside. We're taught to be strong, but no one teaches us how to be strong honestly. They tell you, don't be weak, but no one tells you the truth. The more willing you are to admit you're hurting, the stronger you are. Strength isn't never breaking. It's having the courage to name your pain and sit with it long enough that it loses its power over you. You can't heal while you're still in denial. You can't grow if you're still pretending. You can't love anyone truly if you're not being real with yourself. So the first step to rebirth isn't forced positivity, fake strength, or pushing forward with gritted teeth. The first step is acceptance. Accept that you've been weak. Accept that you've been wrong. Accept that some things won't return, and that some parts of you need to change, not to please anyone else, but so you can live without hiding from yourself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The wound is where the light enters, but only if you open it. The more you conceal it, the more you coat it with denial, the more it festers. The more you face it, the more honest you are, the more you open the door to transformation. We fear that if we admit how messed up we are, we'll lose our worth. But the truth is, real strength comes from accepting your imperfection. It frees you from the mask. It lets you live with a new kind of energy. No more posturing, no more running, no more pretending to be fine. And when you live with truth, even the most painful truth, something strange happens. The fear starts to vanish. With nothing to hide, nothing to fake, you become untouchable. No one can use the truth against you when you've already owned it. Try it. Sit down, alone. No phone, no social media, no music, just you and yourself. Ask the questions you've been dodging. You might cry, you might get angry, but in the end, you'll feel it. Liberation. Because you're no longer trapped in lies. And that moment, when you are brutally honest with yourself, is the moment you start to take command of your life. No more proving, no more running, just a person living in truth, and because of that, unbreakable. Be grateful for adversity sounds like a cliche, especially when you're drowning. When you've just lost your job, your relationship has collapsed, and everything you've worked for disintegrates in a flash. Someone telling you to be grateful feels like a slap in the face. But if you make it through that pain, if you survive to tell the story, you'll begin to see what you couldn't while stuck in the storm. It was adversity, not peace, that made you who you are. The Stoics never romanticized suffering, but they knew every upheaval, if handled correctly, is fuel for growth. Not poetic growth, not Instagram quote growth. Growth that sinks into your blood, your bones, your worldview, and how you treat others. You begin to understand other people's pain because you've hurt too. You live more truthfully because you spent too long pretending. You learn when to stay silent, when not to promise, when to say no to protect yourself. Because you've paid the price for being too naive, too trusting, too eager to be the good guy all the time. If you never failed, you'd never learn how to walk steadily. If no one had ever left you, you wouldn't have learned how to stay with yourself. If you'd never hit rock bottom, you wouldn't know the value of one honest dollar earned through your own sweat. Hardship, in its own twisted way, is a gift wrapped in ugly paper. Only those brave enough to unwrap it, those patient enough to see it through, will realize it's not a curse inside, but a new version of themselves. Sharper, deeper, more respectable. You can't rewrite the past, but you can choose how to tell it. You can frame it as a series of failures, or as the forging of steel. When you change that lens, you're not denying pain, you're giving it purpose. Gratitude for adversity doesn't mean you enjoy suffering. It means you've got the backbone to look at the worst things that happened and say, I went through that, and I didn't waste it. Gratitude doesn't erase the pain. It turns pain into something useful. In a world where everyone runs from pain at all costs, numbing themselves with distractions, drugs, consumerism, social media. The simple act of sitting with your adversity, learning from it, is an act of rebellion. A declaration: I'm not here to avoid pain, I'm here to grow. And once you're truly grateful for adversity, you won't fear it anymore. Because you'll know, even if life throws you down again, you'll rise. Not because you're indestructible, but because you've died once already and came back with more clarity, more strength. Growth isn't a reward, it's the mission. And adversity is the shortest path to get there. If you're on that path now, don't turn back. Keep walking. Because a better version of you is waiting on the other side, and it won't come find you in comfort. History isn't a string of random events. It's a ruthless cycle that humanity keeps throwing itself into, over and over again. And in that cycle, men play the defining role, but they're also the weakest link when they stop paying attention. Hard times produce strong men. Poverty, war, loss, these demand discipline, sacrifice, and grit. The men forged in such adversity have no choice but to grow up fast, endure more than most, and act for something greater than themselves. Then, once they succeed, they create a good era, a stable, safe, abundant society. But inside that comfort, something dangerous begins to happen. The next generation grows up never knowing struggle. They are protected, pampered, raised to believe that emotions matter more than responsibility. No one has the right to hurt their feelings, that anything they want is something they deserve. And so, good times give rise to weak men. Weak in will, weak in action, weak in discipline. They don't lack opportunity, they lack character. They have every tool but no idea what to do with them. And when weak men become the majority, society begins to rot. Because when those who should carry the weight shrink away, pass on responsibility, and turn their backs on pressure, what's left to hold order together? Nothing. Order collapses, everything spirals, and hard times return. The cycle restarts, waiting for a new generation that's hungry, hurting, and brave enough to claw their way out of the rubble and rebuild from scratch. Which part of the cycle are you living in? Chances are, you're in the final stage of the good times, the part where comfort is disguised as freedom, where weakness is paraded as humanity, where society flinches at any mention of toughness, principles, or sacrifice. And if you're not awake, you'll get pulled into the machinery that churns out the next batch of soft men. Fragile, lazy, easily broken by the smallest offense. Stoicism doesn't hand you a suit of armor to survive this world. It gives you a mirror to see for yourself what kind of link you are in this cycle. Are you being forged into someone strong, or are you sliding bit by bit into a weakness that you've already started defending? Because the cycle has no mercy. It doesn't care if you're in pain, if you understand, if you're ready. It keeps moving. And you only have two options: be crushed by it, or become strong enough to break it. If you're living in easy times, be on guard. Don't let comfort make you soft. Don't let freedom make you undisciplined. Don't let convenience make you forget who you are and who you could be if you dared to go against the inertia of your era. You can be the new Link. A man who chooses strength not because he's forced to, but because he knows there is no other option if the future is to have room for dignity, responsibility, and resilience. Hard times are coming. The only question is, will you be the next victim or the one who starts again from the ashes? The cycle never changes, only the men within it do. You can end up anywhere, but it all begins with choosing where you stand. Right now, right here, in the middle of a collapsing age. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.